this is the Emax Tinyhawk 3 Plus Digital FPV Whoop. Now, this is the version that comes pre-installed with HDZero, and what I'm going to do today is walk you through this quad, its features, its capabilities, take it for a flight, and then at the very end, share with you my thoughts. Now, just for complete clarity up front, Emax did send me this quad over for free to review. However, they have not paid me to make this review. They've not seen this review before it's been published, and as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Okay, so what I've got here is the bind and fly kit. This is the version without the FPV goggles or the remote controller. It's just the quad itself. If we look on the back, you can see it says Tinyhawk 3 Plus HDZero bind and fly, and that is because this is the digital version. You can, though, also get this in an analog version as well. Now, it comes in this nice sort of semi-hard case, which keeps everything nice and tidy. It does have a plastic zip, not a metal zip on that case. I just wanted to mention that. And then inside, you'll find the quad itself. You'll find this little USB charger, which is designed for the 1S battery. We've then got in the top of the case some additional accessories. So we've got some spare props, we've got some stickers, some leaflets, as well as a card and some more information there from Emax. Now, also in here, if you go in, there's some little accessories. They include a little board here for the HDZero VTX. Fantastic to see that they've included this. The board that's installed on this is that Whoop Lite kit with that nano camera, and they've included the firmware update cable adapter in the kit with it as well. It's good to see because sometimes when you do get bind and flies, they don't always give you everything that you would get in a standard standalone purchase of, say, that specific piece of hardware, and it's very important for this HDZero VTX that you do have it. Okay, now looking around the Tinyhawk 3 Plus in a bit more detail. Now, as I've said, this is the digital version and it has HDZero built in. It has that Whoop Lite kit, so we have the nano camera, and then underneath there, it has the Whoop Lite VTX. Now, frame-wise, it is a 3-inch 76mm quad and it weighs 35.5 grams without the battery. It has an Emax AIO flight controller with an F411 CPU that has onboard Express LRS receiver as well. It is an SPI receiver and it is compatible with Express LRS version 3 times. It has the gyro, which is the ICM 20689, and it has the Emax motors, which they are calling their TH0802s, which are 15,000 kV. It is designed to be used with a 1S battery, and they actually include one in the kit, which is 650 milliamp hour. Not sure what the flight time is on this yet. We'll talk about that a bit more later on. And overall, there's really not a lot more to say other than that, in the sense of what we have here is a 3-inch Whoop, which has everything on board and it is ready to go. Now, what is nice about this, and I have confirmed this in beta flight, is that it does come completely pre-configured. Now, you would expect that from a bind and fly, but I will say some of the bind and flies that I have had don't always come fully ready to go, whereas this really does. All of the modes are preset, the configuration is done. All you need to do is put in your binding phrase for Express LRS, which you can do via Betaflight. It's ready to connect. You want to check all of your modes and switches are acting like you would expect, and then it's basically ready to use. Now, just looking around the rest of the quad, there really isn't a lot to show you other than we've got our power connector there with a capacitor pre-installed under some heat shrink tubing. We've got our little battery bay underneath the bottom there with some elastic bands to hold it in place. And the quad itself is housed in this nice flexible plastic frame. It doesn't feel like that brittle kind of plastic like we've seen on some of the other models from other manufacturers. It does feel like it's got a bit of give in it. And whilst I'm not going to say you won't break it, it shouldn't instantly shatter like we've seen from some other quads. Then on the back, we've got our little antenna there for the HDZero system, which is just located under there. A couple of other nice little details I just want to mention. The camera is fully adjustable. You can see it there, and it's protected in this plastic housing. And the flight controller also comes with a USB-C connector installed as standard, and it's nice and easy to get to. If I just flip it up there, you can see that HDZero nano camera and also that USB-C there. You're going to have no problems plugging your cable in. It's nice to see because you do find on some of these smaller quads that the USB ports are not in the easiest to access place. Now, just to give you a quick overview of this little USB charger that they include, it supports 1S and 2S input, and it has a switch on each side. So for this bank or this bank, for standard LiPo or HV, and you can just flick that either way. And then if we flip it over to the back, you can see it's 5 volt 2 amp input, and the output is 1S 4.35 volts on HV, or 2S 8.4 volts or 8.7 volts on HV. So again, it's just a nice and quick, easy way to charge your batteries. It's not going to be the fastest in the world, not going to be the slowest, and it's going to get the job done. Now, as I mentioned, both of these quads are fitted with the HDZero system. They both have the same Whoop light kit, which consists of the Whoop light VTX, which is capable up to 200 milliwatts of RF output, and the same camera. The great thing about HDZero is that it is compatible with all of the HDZero receivers. So that is the original Fat Shark VRX, the HDZero VRX, or the HDZero goggles. You can use any of the goggles that will take HDMI input with a HDZero VRX as well, such as the Caddx Goggles X if you wanted to. Now, the great thing about having HDZero on a quad like this is that you're going to get the lowest possible latency. Remember, HDZero is a fixed latency digital FPV system, whereas the likes of DJI and Avatar HD prioritize image over latency and give you a variable latency output. HDZero is a fixed latency and it prioritizes that latency number over the image. The difference really in how they look to the user is HDZero is a more analog feel in the way it breaks up, not quite the same as analog, but what you're getting is permanent fixed latency whatever happens, and that's going to be a benefit, especially in a quad like this or quads that you're using for racing. Now, as this is the Whoop light camera, it supports both 16:9 as well as 4:3 aspect ratio. There is, though, a difference in field of view as a result of that. You've got 130 degrees versus 122. And when coupled to the HDZero VTX here, you can have that 720p 60 frames a second mode. This camera doesn't support the 1080p mode, nor does it support the new 540p 90, but it's still going to offer you lower latency than you would get on any of the other digital FPV systems. Now, as I've mentioned, these are bind and fly quads. There is no need to update the firmware on these. In my checks, they both came with Betaflight version 4.2.2. I strongly advise you do not try to update Betaflight. There is no need to change anything. One of the biggest mistakes people make with the bind and fly is updating Betaflight, because when you do that, it's going to lose all of the settings. And whilst the dev team have made huge steps in the new versions of Betaflight to try and get around this, there is no need to make changes here. With regards to setting these up, though, you are going to need to configure them to work with your Express LRS radio. You can do that via Betaflight configurator, and that's what I'm going to walk you through next. Now, the only thing I need to do to get this up and running is bind it to my Express LRS transmitter. Now, I'm going to do this via Betaflight, so what we're going to do is plug in our USB-C port. You'll then see the lights flash, and we should then be able to connect to Betaflight. Once in Betaflight, I'm simply going to go down to the receiver tab, and you can see here we've got the Express LRS receiver showing. It shows it via SPI, the type, and what we're simply going to do is put our binding phrase into there. I'm just going to paste in my binding phrase that I have preset on all of my other systems, and then I'm simply going to click Save and Reboot. Now that's done, it then should connect to my Express LRS transmitter. Now for this, I'm going to be using the Radio Master Pocket. As I did mention, you can get this quad with the Emax transmitter and goggles if you want, but if you don't want to do that, you can get your own radio system, and something like the Pocket from Radio Master is perfect for a quad like this. So if I just power it back up again via USB, we then should hear it connect. Hopefully it will connect to the radio. There we go. There we go. That tells us that we're ready to rock and roll. And then in Betaflight, under the receiver tab, we should be able to see if it's working. And whilst it is, something isn't right, because if you look, this is my throttle stick that I'm moving, and unfortunately it's moving the pitch, and that is because it has the wrong channel map. To change that, we're going to change this from TAER down here to default on AETR1234. Click Save. That should then change everything around, and hopefully then you can see throttle is now moving the throttle. Yaw is moving the yaw, pitch is doing pitch, roll is doing roll, so everything now is working exactly as expected. Now, before you use your radio, the one thing you do want to check is that the channel mapping is correct on the modes. They have pre-configured everything. If I scroll down, you can see we've got flip over crash, beeper, horizon mode, angle mode, and arm, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are mapped to the correct switches on your radio. For me, I'm just going to check arming is correct. That's absolutely fine. I then check my mode switch. No, that isn't correct. My mode is actually aux 4, so what we're going to do is change that to aux 4 for the modes. There we go. You can see that moves nicely. And then my beeper is actually a different switch. So what we want to do is set that to auto. And that is aux 2 for the beeper. So what we're going to do is scroll down, set that to aux 2. So we've got the beeper and flip over crash on the same setting, and then click save. Now, with regards to PID tuning, that's already been set on this quad. We're not going to touch anything under here. What I am going to do, though, is just have a quick look at the rate profile settings and see what they've got set. You can see that there's no throttle limit. Throttle mid is at 0.5, and they've also got throttle expo at 0.5 as well. And the rates are there set at 506, 500, and 486. And I'm going to leave that as it is for now. Okay, so the weather is pretty horrific. So I'm just going to take this for a few flights around the workshop. What we're going to do is put it into angle mode. We're not going to bother with air mode on this one. So we're on the wrong mode. So there we go. So what we're going to do is just go for a bit of a scoot around the workshop so you can see what the image quality looks like on this camera. Now, there is nothing new here on this quad with regards to HDZero, in the sense of it's the same camera we've seen before. Yes, the workshop is very small to fly around. You're getting some effect of the frame rate as a result of the mains frequency here, and that's why you're seeing the lights flicker. There is also crazy Wi-Fi in here as well. Oh, let's go there. Oh, can we make it through? Yes, let's go around there. And really, more than anything, this is just for me to give you an idea of how it flies. Now, I have to say, out the box, the tune is actually quite good. Look, I'm not a great whoop pilot. I'm not someone that flies whoops a great deal. But I can say it flies all right. No complaints, no issues. No problems whatsoever. Easily able to get through, you know, a complex environment like this with it. And if you're looking to get yourself a little HD whoop, this is absolutely going to be worth a look. I really do like the quads that Emax make. I'm a real big fan of their small quads. They always fly really well. They just tend to tune them quite well out the door. And whilst I'm not going to say they are absolutely the best on the market because I don't have enough experience, what I can say is I really don't get many complaints. There you can see me talking into the mic. Again, this flight test is about as useful as a wet paper bag, but it's just to prove more than anything that it does work. It gives you an indication of the noise from it as well. And yeah, not really any complaints. Now, flight time wise, we're 2 minutes 25. Don't want to go into there. 2 minutes 25 so far to 3.5 volts. So we're coming towards the end of this battery. 3 minutes may be possible. You know, 2 minutes is definitely possible. Oh, that's me. But yeah, if we see if we can get to 3 minutes and see what the voltage gets like, certainly not pushing it. This is what HDZero does so well. This kind of environment. You know, look, I'm very close. Any interference you might be seeing on HDZero will be largely driven by how close I am, actually, not the system itself. So, look, there we go. We've hit 3 minutes. So, I'm going to stop that one there. Now, I did also take this out for a few flights in the real world, although the wind was just too much for a quad of this size, as you can see here in the footage. The weather here in Wales this time of year really does make it difficult for me to test fly quads, but you can see it out here in real world with regards to the colours, how it's behaving. In the end, I only did one test on one battery because I didn't want to push things too much because the wind was just pushing it all over the place. I was just waiting here for a walker to come past. I was told by my wife that there was one coming, so once they came past, I was able to carry on with the flight. Then it was just a case of just moving it around the trees to see how it is, but the wind was just too much for a quad of this size. As I've said already on the indoor flights, HDZero is absolutely perfect for this size class of aircraft. It really does fit very well into whoops and small 2 and 3 inch quads, and we're going to be taking a look at that freestyle version of this one in the near future. Okay, so just to share with you some final thoughts. Now, I am not a whoop expert. Nick Burns is the guy that's going to tell you everything that is amazing and bad about a quad like this. There are loads of things that I've probably missed. I know people will bitch and moan about the types of battery connectors that are used on some of these little quads, lots of other stuff. I'm coming at this, though, from a sort of 4 or 5 inch guy who's flown big stuff, small stuff, and really as a guy that just wants to buy a little whoop and fly it. And I actually think it's really, really good. I always like the products that Emax put out. I've never really had any complaints with any of them, and this Tinyhawk 3 Plus here again is another good one. HDZero, decent flight time. I'm not going to say it's the best, not going to say it's the worst, but if you're looking to get yourself a bind and fly whoop that just works out of the box, this is definitely going to be worth a look. Now, there are several versions of this quad available. You have the bind and fly versions that are available with a set of goggles as well as a remote controller, or you can get it as it is, as you've seen here today from me. And as I've said several times already, you also have a freestyle version of this, which we're going to be taking a look at in a separate video in the near future. Now, if we have a look around, you can get it in analog as well as HDZero. If we click on the HDZero version, you can then see you can get it in the bind and fly for $239, or you can get it in the full ready to fly kit with that Emax HDZero compatible display, goggles, whatever you want to call them, and a remote controller for $489. The freestyle version, which is slightly different, is available here as well. And as I've said, we will cover this in a separate video. That is going to be available for $499 in the ready to fly or $249 in the bind and fly. Now, if you're interested in getting one, there will be a link to it in the description. It is not an affiliate link. It is a link to Emax Direct. Emax did send me this one over. I want to say a big thank you to Emax for doing that. If you're interested in supporting the channel to allow us to keep making content like this in the future, please do consider also checking out the links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee in the description. It is only through the support of my Patreons I'm able to keep making content on this channel, and if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep doing that in the future, please do consider checking it out. Now, finally, I just want to say if there's anything I missed, I'm really interested in your thoughts. Put them down below, any questions, and I will try and answer them as well. That's it from me. Stay safe, and I will speak to you soon.